WWE is a wild place with larger-than-life personalities. As a result, things tend to get out of control backstage more often than not. This is Wrestling Up near 10 ridiculous WWE backstage stories. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Up and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Randy Orton is known for being a serial prankster, and Cody Rhodes found himself a victim. In an interview, Orton talked about how he pulled off a prank on Cody, saying Evan Bourne, Orton, Chris Masters, Santino Marella, Ted DiBiase, and Cody Rhodes were at a tanning salon. He said at the time it was a common trick among wrestlers that if they went into the tanning bed and left the door open, then the others would go in there and steal clothes. Cody made this very mistake, so I went back inside his room, and of course he's tanning, so he's got a towel over his face and he has no idea what's going on. So take my foot and open the door, and there is Cody Rhodes with only a towel over his face, and he's, let's just say, standing at attention. He took a picture of Cody in that scenario, but they had to delete it because Rhodes was furious. Randy added he felt it was the most embarrassing moment of Cody's career. The Undertaker has been a major influence throughout his 30 years in wrestling. While he was intimidating on screen, backstage he couldn't let loose. Still, as a locker room leader, he was a formidable force and once threatened to beat up Shawn Michaels if he tried to ruin WrestleMania by not dropping the title to Stone Cold Steve Austin, though there are people who managed to get the best of Taker backstage. There was once a time when Taker's manager Paul Bearer wet his pants at a gas station, and Taker would not let Paul hear the end of it. Bearer decided to get back at him. Undertaker has a fear of cucumbers, as he filled Taker's hat full of them. Undertaker was so disgusted and afraid he began to vomit all over his hat. Mark Henry came to WWE and signed a long-term contract after winning many strongman competitions. Backstage, many were jealous about the deal a newcomer in Henry got. They played a lot of tricks on him, including taking his crutches from him when he was injured after he had broken his leg. Once Mark left his sandwich unattended, and apparently a wrestler then defecated in it. Henry didn't even notice, as he must have been in a hurry and was hungry, as he ate over half of the sandwich before realizing what was in it. It was thought X-Pac was the one to blame for this, as he put feces in Sable's bag for similar reasons. Henry would vomit when he came back, he found that his crutches were gone. He was then told to go meet Vince McMahon before he can even shout about his crutches. When he got there, he found out that Vince was not even in the arena. Roddy Piper is known for being a wild wrestler and was in his fair share of scraps. One time he was driving with Kevin Sullivan in Florida. Seeing an alligator in a nearby canal, Piper thought of killing it and skinning it to make a belt and shoes.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
He chose his target after stopping the car, then he and Sullivan began to shoot the gator. They thought it was dead and made their way into the canal to retrieve it, yet it was alive. It dove underwater, with the two making a run for it. In the Spirit Squad, Dolph Ziggler decided to play a prank on one of the biggest stars, setting up a trap for the Big Show in the ring. He put a Subway sandwich there, and around it he made a loop with a mic cord. The sandwich was in the middle of the ring before the house show. Now it's not clear what Big Show was thinking. He apparently saw it and went to go pick it up. None of it makes any sense, it was in the middle of the ring after all. Then was caught in the cord as Ziggler tightened it around his leg. He would then exclaim what was going on as Ziggler showed himself. In the next few weeks, Big Show destroyed the Spirit Squad when they were placed in matches together. Early in his wrestling career, Randy Orton was far more controversial. Back in 2015, during an interview, the Great Khali revealed yet another ridiculous backstage story about Randy. While Orton took it upon himself to harass newcomers, he seemed to help Khali, though the help was only apparent. Khali was given painkillers by Randy, saying the pills were so strong I couldn't feel my legs. My foot kept slipping and I fell. Other than harassing a young Amy Weber as well as his dirty handshake stories, it seems that Khali got off lightly when it came to Randy's tricks. There was a time when Steve Austin, Mick Foley, and Diamond Dallas Page were sharing a hotel room, as DDP apparently had the habit of walking around the room naked. The other two decided to get back at him. They put chocolate chip cookies in his bed while he was in the shower after a long hard day at work. Page came back to the room and in the dark climbed into his bed naked. He soon noticed, then heard Mick Foley laughing. He understood Foley was involved, and what followed was a food fight, as DDP started to throw cookies while naked.
Bro, I'm out, man.
Goldust has always been a controversial figure on WWE screens. He was an eccentric, androgynous villain and wanted to take it a step further by getting breast implants. According to Bruce Pritchard, we were in Madison Square Garden and there had been some guy that had gotten breast implants, and there was a lot to do about it. Everything was fizzling. There was no real direction with Goldust. In my head, it happened at MSG where Dustin had worked himself up for this pitch. He had pitched it to everybody around Vince McMahon, so Vince knew what Goldust was going to pitch to him, and he had already heard it. There was no way Vince was going to allow him to do this. He did not want him to do it. We had jumped the shark so many times on this gimmick that this was something that was not going to happen. Dustin Rhodes felt that this is the only thing that can revive his career. He really wanted to get breast implants, get double Ds, but thank God McMahon talked him out of it. Back in the day, Vince McMahon could not afford to keep Bret Hart around as WCW had offered him a huge deal. Bret was champion in WWE and refused to drop the title to Shawn Michaels, telling Vince he would surrender the belt the next day after Survivor Series, but at that time he would not be under contract. McMahon was already nervous as Medusa, the WWE Women's Champion, left for WCW, throwing away the belt on the opposition's program. McMahon devised a plan. When the time came, Shawn put Bret in a sharpshooter, then McMahon instructed Earl Hebner to ring the bell. Even though Hart had not tapped, Shawn was declared the champion in front of the Montreal crowd that was behind Bret. Triple H and Shawn quickly ran away while Bret spat at Vince, wrecked the ringside area, then later punched McMahon. Much later in a book, Shawn Michaels would reveal Triple H came up with the idea for the screw job. Triple H apparently told Vince to go ahead with it and take things into his own hands, as he thought that Bret was going against the traditions of the business that a wrestler would go out losing and set up the next big star. Screw him. If you won't do business, then you do business for him. Talking about it even years later, Michaels admitted that it was one of the most uncomfortable days. I just recall up to that point, there being big scuttlebutt all over like what's going to happen with Bret leaving. Then of course an infamous phone call between myself and Hunter and Vince. I want to say it was just the week before. There was certainly no talk of it, for me one way or another, until that phone call the week before Survivor Series. Probably the most uncomfortable day I've ever had in wrestling. By the time the day comes, the decision has been made, but no one knows how it's going to get done until Bret and I sit down to start discussing the match. None of this can go into play until we do that, and so it was just an uncomfortable day knowing what you know, how others assume it's going to happen, then you having to be the one to orchestrate it. Bret Hart talked about this as well, saying while Shawn had been a willing participant, he was not the mastermind. I'd say I gave Shawn the benefit of the doubt up until I knew what happened, and that's why he was so ashamed. And Triple H, from what I gathered, he was pushing that thing more than Shawn. Shawn was more of a willing participant. Triple H and Briscoe and Vince were the ones who created the whole thing happening. And these were 10 ridiculous backstage stories. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.